Welcome back to New World Next Week. I'm James Corbett of CorbettReport.com.
And I'm James Evan Pilato of MediaMonarchy.com. Crazy, this could be used by Nazis. We've got that story plus the raving Israelis. But first, on this all-Zio-Nazi World War III episode, folks might know I do a This Day in History segment every morning on my morning show. Last Friday, October 6th, was the anniversary of the start of the Yom Kippur War, and I said, watch out, occupied Ziostein likes to, have wars on their holidays. And so it goes. Hamas launches large-scale combined attack on Israel. Israeli occupation army said Hamas was behind a combined attack including the firing of rockets and terrorist infiltrations into Israeli territory from the Gaza Strip. Rockets streamed across the sky repeatedly after the first launches from multiple locations across Gaza. The armed wing of Palestinian group Hamas said it was behind the fire, claiming its militants had launched more than 5,000 rockets. We decided to put an end to all the crimes of the occupation. Their time for rampaging without being held accountable is over. We announced Operation Al-Aqsa Flood, and we fired, in the first strike of 20 minutes, more than 5,000 rockets. Israeli occupation army said Hamas was behind a combined attack. The office of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, whose father helped blow up the King David Hotel with Irgun terrorists, said the premier will shortly convene security chiefs over the violence. Israel has imposed a crippling blockade on Gaza since 2007, after Hamas took power. Palestinian militants in Israel have fought several devastating wars since then. The latest fire follows a period of heightened tensions in September when Israel closed the border to Gazan workers for 2 weeks. The shutdown of the crossing came as Palestinian protests rocked the heavily militarized border. Protesters had resorted to throwing rocks at Israeli troops, who responded with bullets. Critics had slammed the border closures as collective punishment against thousands of Palestinian workers who have far greater earning potential in Israel than in Gaza, where unemployment is rife. Vast majority of fatalities have occurred in the West Bank, which has been occupied by Israel since the 1967 Arab-Israeli conflict. There's been a rise in occupation army raids, Palestinian attacks targeting Israelis, and Israeli settler violence against Palestinians and their property. Several far-right Israeli ministers live in settlements in the occupied West Bank, which are deemed illegal under international law. Nobody cares about that. This, of course, as we have to often remind you on New World Next Week, a developing bunch of stories, and we can only give you what we know as of right now, October 11th, 2023, 6:12 p.m. Mountain Time. But there is no shortage of cheers and jeers on this episode. Anti-war independent RFKJ supports Zionist right to self-defense. You got to read this tweet from RFK Jr., and it's real interesting, James. It seems like his support on the left is gone over his weird vaccine stance. His support on the right is gone over now his weird warmonger stance. It's kind of parallel, bizarro clown world. Meanwhile, Mark Crispin Miller says this surprise attack on Israel seems just as sketchy as the wildfires in Lahaina. Decensored.news covers the media blackout after Hamas issues that statement about their motives for the attack on Israel, which doesn't get a lot of coverage. Israel orders a complete siege on Gaza Strip, cuts off electricity, food, fuel, and water for the human animals. That coming from my man Chris at informationliberation.com. And hundreds of thousands more Israelis okay to carry guns under new rules. That from timesofisrael.com. And perhaps the most galling one, James. U.S. has enough weapons for Israel, Ukraine, and more, says the Pentagram. Of course, this whole thing, every bit of it, all stinks to high heaven. Zionist, terrorist, false flag events, amplified by feds and talking heads. Nepo baby Jamie Lee Curtis shared a sad photo saying, "Terror from the skies," until she realized she was sharing a photo of Israelis bombing Palestinians. Post deleted. I think the thing I might trust most, frighteningly now, James, is what the CIA, Amazon, Washington Post listening device said back on February 3rd of 2023. Alexa says World War III will start on November 23rd when Russia attacks Germany. And I will say again, for the 1,000th time, for people who might not know anything about eschatology or the Bible or end times or Revelations or Armageddon, when you hear that the Dome of the Rock, the Al-Aqsa Mosque, when you hear that the Dome of the Rock has been blown up, as far as Armageddon pimps believe, that will be World War III. Period. You've heard me say that dozens of times over these dozen or so years. That is in, I believe, James, it's in one of the books they didn't remove from the Bible. James.
All right, James, let me underline what you said there. That's incredibly important for people to understand. What by the time you are hearing this, this will already be 24 hours old, what we are talking about right now. So whatever breaking news headlines are in the news at the time you're watching this, we don't know about yet. So we can't cover the up to the second breaking news. But what we can do is zoom out a little and give the perspective on this story. And you're exactly right to say that this stinks to high heaven. There are so many things that are coming out right now that certainly don't add up in any way that makes logical sense. So I think again, if people are interested, I will have a lot more to say about this. I believe I'm scheduled to be talking to Ryan Christian on the LastAmericanVagabond.com in the coming days. So stay tuned for that, and please do watch the coverage that Ryan Christian is doing right now. He's doing hours-long streams every single day on this subject, and all the up to the second breaking news. But I think it's important to put this in the context because, again, there's all sorts of craziness going on right now, and I would say do not believe anything you are hearing, certainly not at face value, coming out of this war zone right now. Never believe anything you're hearing coming out of a war zone, but especially this one. One case in point that everyone's seen by now, and the Gray Zone, for example, has this story up. The source of the dubious beheaded babies claim is, drumroll please, settler leader who incited riots to wipe out Palestinian village. And this is the source that was unquestioningly parroted by the, I believe, I-24 reporter, and then got picked up by Netanyahu and Biden, etc., etc. So this is how this kind of atrocity propaganda and propaganda generally starts to spread very quickly. But what this potentially is about, and what you're gesturing to right there, is the potential for the broader conflict. And we all know what broader conflict means when we start talking about end times apocalypticism in the Holy Land, etc., right? So for some perspective on that and what it could mean, I'll direct people to Covert Action Magazine, which had a post up about widening the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, yellow journalism stoking potential war on Iran, talking about that WSJ article that came out right in the wake of this. Oh, it was Iran. We've got inside sources that are telling us Iran was helping to plot this, which was then further amplified by Israeli Foreign Minister Eli Cohen, who talked about Hamas, and this is Hamas, who is a proxy of Iran. So floating that, it looks, again, at the point at which we're recording this, that maybe they're walking that back a little bit and they're not going to push that. At any rate, the New York Times apparently has a new post up via antiwar.com. U.S. intelligence shows Iranian leaders were surprised by Hamas attack. So maybe they're not going to pull that trigger yet, but maybe they are. The latest up from the official Iranian website, Khomeini.ir, with a post about Supreme Leader Imam Khomeini, and his statement on this, basically, obviously saying this is a natural result of Zionist oppression of the Palestinians, etc., etc. So he's not walking back anything like, we condemn violence on all sides or anything like that. It certainly plays into the potential for the spreading of this. And I think that's what we have to definitely be concerned about, because, hey, whatever your position on everything that's happening, the potential for this to incredibly expand very quickly on a knife edge, on a dime, is there. And I don't know where this is going, and it depends on how much they press that lever. But as the second ever episode of Corbett Report podcast was, World War III starts in Iran. Maybe it starts in Germany, according to Alexa. But at any rate, we're talking about the potential widening of this conflict to an unprecedented level. So I think everyone needs to have their eyes on this story right now.
And as you discussed, they sort of see the propaganda with these emotional stories. It's, like you said, incubator babies 2023. War propaganda. Again,
yeah.
It's all...
My only question is this Incubator Babies 2.0 or Babies on Bayonets 2.0? Why not both?
Why not both, indeed. 23andMe. User data targeting Ashkenazi Jews leaked online. You wondered what the third and final story would be for this. Hackers have compiled a giant apparent list of people with Ashkenazi Jewish ancestry after taking that information from genetic testing service 23andMe, which is now being shared on the internet. A database that has been shared on dark web forums and viewed by Comcast NBC News has a list of 999,999 people who allegedly have used the service. It includes their first and last name, sex, and 23andMe's evaluation of where their ancestors came from. The database is titled Ashkenazi DNA Data of Celebrities, though most of the people on it aren't famous, and it appears to have been sorted to only include people with Ashkenazi heritage. NBC News was able to verify 2 23andMe users in the breach as being authentic. They talked to 2 people and said, yep, that's me, that's my name, that's my ID. Crazy. This could be used by Nazis, one person who appears in the database said, hilariously without a shred of irony. A popular option available to the company's 14 million users called DNA Relatives allows any account to search for others who may be even a distant genetic match. A single account can see the accounts of thousands of others. 23andMe now believes that the hackers simply recycled some users' passwords, it isn't clear how many, to scrape the list of people it had labeled as having Ashkenazi heritage. James, I don't know if you know people that have done this, but I've heard from some. It said we're Jewish. That's weird. Up to 40% of at-home genetic test results may be false positives. April 17th, 2018. I will include the research that they are reporting on. False positive results released by direct-to-consumer genetic tests highlight the importance of clinical confirmation testing for appropriate patient care. Meanwhile, James, in the, what was it called? Project for a New American Century, just a little bit, a few pages after they call for a new Pearl Harbor, they write, quote, advanced forms of biological warfare that can target specific genotypes may transform biological warfare from the realm of terror to a politically useful tool. Their project for a new world century is off to the races, man.
Yeah, exactly right. Thank you for bringing up that reference. We should bring it up every time it's mentioned. Yes, race-specific bioweapons. Politically useful tool, says the Project for a New American Century. And who was actually working on that in the 80s? Oh, yeah, South Africa. And under the tutelage of whom? Oh, that's right, people like David Kelly and others in the UK version, Porton Down version of that particular realm of research. And who was interested in acquiring that from South Africa? Oh, that's right, Israel. So there you go. There's kind of the circularity on that. And then, yes, this information could be used by Nazis, who, of course, were very interested and very salivating over the prospect of genetic databases. Yay, eugenics. But who else was interested in eugenics? Oh, how about the originators of eugenics, i.e. the British gentleman scientist class there in the late 19th century, and then, of course, transported over to the U.S. and funded into existence by wealthy American billionaire benefactors like the Rockefellers, etc. And yeah, they were the ones who were funding the Kaiser Wilhelm Institutes in Germany. So anyway, that's an interesting circularity. And then, yeah, you would think, yeah, of course, this could be used by Nazis or other eugenics-obsessed crazies out there. Yes, it certainly could. But wouldn't you think that the people who supposedly you would, at least they tell us, they're very concerned about, the prospect of being cattle tagged and marked and databased in these IBM Hollerith machines, etc. Well, shouldn't you be concerned then about the very existence of genetic databases at all? Why is this security breach the first time that it is crossing your mind that maybe we don't want to be submitting our genetics to some company to have that information out there to be used willy-nilly by eugenicists of various stripes, including Nazis, right? Yeah, there's so much circularity to this story, it almost hurts. But I think it just goes to show. Anyway, I would assume most of our audience are not sending their genetics into some company to get them tested. 23andMe, who founded that? And who's she the sister of? And how does that work? Or the wife of who again? Yeah, once you start looking into it, it's crazier and crazier. And I should probably do a deep dive on this story in particular. But yeah, anyway, wake up call for any normie who stumbled into this podcast somehow. Yeah, don't send your genetics off to some company don't worry, they'll keep it safe for me. No, it can and will be used against you.
And they don't even need a court of so-called law to be having it used against you.